It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Connecticut College assistant water polo coach, Coach Hannah Ellett. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in collegiate water polo?
So last year I was teaching high school and coaching water polo out there, running club, and I realized I wanted to spend more of my prep time focused on what I was doing at practice than maybe what would be happening in the classroom. And so I kind of just realized I think I want to do water polo full time. And so I luckily found an opportunity to pursue that and had the support from my family and the community that I was coaching in, and was able to take that leap. So
what was that experience like, going to college, to wider college, and getting to compete in water polo?
Yeah, so I graduated high school in 2013, and I was coming from an area that is not known as the Mecca of water polo. We're the Central Valley, where, there's some great clubs coming up, and like in the last couple of years, it's been a lot of hard work out there. And so you'll see that development. But even I was having to drive quite a long ways to play club growing up. And so when I got the opportunity to look at Whittier and talk with Coach Pudwell, I was really excited about getting to play Division III, getting to kind of look at that liberal arts education and then really compete. He had a really competitive schedule set for our men's and women's programs. So we were playing a lot of Division I and Division II teams. So I think I was really excited to kind of get to ease into that college experience and really enjoy both athletics and academics.
What was that feeling like, getting to put on that cap for the first time for Whitler?
Yeah, so I remember our first game. We were at a Santa Barbara tournament, so we were playing some D1s. I think we might have been playing Santa Barbara, which is pretty scary. I think, as a first-year athlete. Luckily, I still had a lot of experience to gain, so it wasn't like I was putting in some serious minutes, but it was so exciting getting to put on that cap. And we're purple, we're the Poets. So it was really fun to lean into that mascot. And I had a great class of girls in my year at Whittier College. We were a large class. I think ultimately there were 9 of us. So it was a lot of fun. It was a great learning experience. And it was like jumping into the deep end of the sport, going from high school where you're playing some competitive games, but for the most part, you feel pretty confident about what you're doing. Going into college where you're like, oh, do I know how to play water polo? And you kind of find that out. So it was great. It was really fun.
Of course, as a college athlete, what was that like, getting to compete against Santa Barbara, UCLA, and Princeton?
Yeah, so it was really fun. We actually never played UCLA, but we played USC twice. And that was in itself an incredible experience. What's really cool about water polo is I like to believe 1 in 10, you have an opportunity to maybe beat any team you face. And I think the conditioning that we really put in allowed us to have some good halves with a solid team like USC or other Division I's. And then eventually you see that experience and that work and those levels differentiate, right, as you get closer and in the fourth quarter and you're like, oh, 22-4 felt pretty close there, for a while. But it was great. I think it really prepared us for our regular conference play, which I think was reflected in our records for how our seasons turned out at Whittier. So it was great. It's also great getting to play against some of the best athletes in our country. Like, we were facing girls who were Olympians for other national teams. And those girls were at like Long Beach as well and other Southern California schools. So it was great. It's great getting your butt kind of handed to you and maybe kind of contending with some of the best athletes in the sport.
Of course, for yourself, when you were a college athlete, what was that like, and that experience like, competing against those future Olympians and Olympians?
It taught me a lot to appreciate conditioning. And as someone, you might find out from a lot of water polo players, they hate swimming, which is just really funny because water polo is really hard if you are not conditioned. It's a really hard sport in general, even when you are conditioned. But it taught me that if you want to compete at the highest levels, and I just mean even on a defensive side, because pressure passing and playing offense against these teams was near impossible sometimes. But defensively, if you wanted to be able to press or keep them from passing or keep them from scoring, you hope, it came clear that you had to train really hard. And that was something I learned to appreciate as a player, because now as a coach, I think I know what it takes to achieve a certain level. And that doesn't mean, I don't maybe mean winning each game, but even just getting in the pool and being proud of the product you put in. And that's all based in effort. So I think playing those games really taught me to appreciate effort.
Of course, what were some of your collegiate water polo experience and accomplishments like?
I think my biggest accomplishment as a college athlete was actually earning playtime. So when I came in, I had so many talented first-year athletes with me who were ready to go out the gate to play at that high of a level. They were making killer passes. They knew how to create on offense, and they were communicating on defense in ways that it took me some time to catch up. And so I think one of my greatest accomplishments was earning playtime within that program and getting to contribute. And then as a team, we made 3 SCIAC conference appearances. We won 2. We lost that third one to Pomona, which was really tough. But I think just getting to compete at the highest level that was available to us at the time. There weren't D3 championships yet for the women's side when I was playing. And so it was really cool to earn those conference championships. And, it was kind of crazy because in the moment you didn't realize, and then you kind of finish the experience and you're like, oh, we kind of did something that mattered, which is really fun. And yeah, I think those are probably some of the largest accomplishments from that time.
Of course, while at college, what was it like getting to coach the youth teams?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough that during the summers, my old coach and my mentor and friend, I can say that now, Christy Dunham, was running the Skimmers Club in our hometown of Merced, California, and she allowed me to come on. We were called AMP. We've had a couple different names back in the day, but she allowed me to come on. I got to coach 14s. 16s, and I even worked with our 18s group, and it was incredible. I think it made me a better player because I actually had to sit in the water and be like, okay, well, how would I teach this? And it really forced me to slow down and then also appreciate, I think, my own coach a little more in college with why are we doing this, or what's the importance of this? You think as an athlete, you're like, why are we spending 45 minutes on passing when we could just be shooting, when really in the game you're like, oh, our passing's really bad. Like, we can't even shoot because our passing is so bad. So I think getting to coach youth really put the sport into perspective for me. And also it made me love it. I'm going to be honest, like, playing in college is really tough, especially when you don't necessarily feel like you're getting to contribute in the way that you want. And so getting to coach youth kept me involved in the sport that reminded me why we're all playing it. Why are we playing sports in the first place? So it was a great experience getting to coach those girls.
How was your experience like getting to go on the high school level and getting coach on the high school level for water polo?
Yeah, so after I graduated from Chico State and everything, COVID hit, I moved back home to Merced and I started coaching again with Christy, and we were kind of running some light stuff, really nothing too much. And then we were able to have a high school season. And so I originally was going to coach the JV girls with her and help on the varsity girls side, but they needed a varsity boys coach and a JV boys. So I stepped into that role and I loved it. Coaching that high school group at El Capitan, the Gauchos, was actually one of my favorite coaching experiences to date. That group of athletes, they just wanted to work hard. They were so bought in, and I think they were really hungry for just a solid experience, and it was great. We were able to do a little bit of club through the summer. They were so committed to the scrimmaging we did, and they were working hard, and that work showed in the fall when we were able to win our conference, which was really exciting, and then continue on through swim season. So it was great. I really enjoyed coaching high school a lot.
Of course, while coaching high school, what was that like getting to balance being a high school water polo coach and a high school teacher?
It's tough. You heard from the start, I said I wanted to just do water polo, which that is so true. I am so impressed by anyone who is teaching full-time and coaching full-time, whether you're coaching at your school or you're running club. A lot of people are doing both. It was an incredible experience. I really enjoyed working with that age group. Not just athletes, but students. I think kids, young adults are just so fun at that age. I think they're really receptive that, they're not too cool yet for certain things. And so It was a really good experience. I loved getting to see I was coaching at a different high school than I was teaching during the fall of my season. So it was pretty funny getting to coach or teach some of the JV boys who then I'd go see on a pool deck less than 40 minutes later playing for the opposite team. And so it was really great getting to coach those kids in club and bringing those two worlds together. But it was a lot of fun, and kudos to anybody who's doing that right now, because teachers and coaches at that level are doing some insane amount of time commitment. But it was fun. I did enjoy it while I was doing it.
What was that transition like from being a high school water polo head coach to then getting into college and coming to Connecticut College?
Yeah, so from high school, I transitioned into McKendree, which was awesome. I think being the aquatics director and getting to run my own program prepared me a lot for that transition into being an assistant in college. Getting to be an assistant water polo coach, you get to run a lot of different things. And so I was really appreciative of Coach Colleen Leishway at McKendree, because she allowed me to take that experience that I had with coordinating schedules, practice times, workouts, meals, things like that, transportation from high school, and directly apply that into the club and the varsity programs that we had going at McKendree. And so I honestly think if I hadn't been teaching and coaching at the high school level, I would have felt so unprepared for the responsibilities that come with being at the college level. So I'm really grateful, because that transition was a little easier, honestly. Getting to take the teaching out of the picture and just the water polo was a pretty easy transition.
Of course, going to McKendree, what was that like getting to learn under Coach Colleen?
Oh, it was awesome. So what I loved about being at McKendree is that we had I like to say we were like road dogs. We had a very intensive schedule. And so we were traveling also with our location of the college out in Illinois. We were doing bus rides to get to games. So I'm talking 12-hour, 14-hour bus rides. So I think what I really appreciated about being there is that I told Colleen, I was like, I want to do more water polo. I need more water polo in my life. And she did not hesitate to provide opportunities for that. We were playing water polo. We were coaching water polo the entire time. And I loved that. We had our men's varsity team going full time, our club team, and then we had our women's team a couple days a week out of season. So it was great. We got to do so much coaching, and I just really appreciated it. There was so much game experience, which was awesome. That was another thing I felt like coaching in high school. I had a great time being in game, but I was really excited to get to step back and be someone's assistant and watch how she managed game time, watch how she controlled practice, and how was she going to structure even just a travel day. So I really appreciated being out there, because she exposed me to so much of what I wanted to see being at this level.
How did your time at McKendree help you into where you are now at Connecticut College?
Yeah, I would say that McKendree set me up to be really successful here at Connecticut. So at Connecticut College, we have a little bit shorter of a season. We follow the NESCAC, which is the athletic conference for our actual college, but not for our sport. And so we have a much shorter season. And so I think being at McKendree taught me, okay, you have a limited amount of time. What do you need to prioritize? What you want to focus on for this team? And I think that was awesome, because while we were at McKendree, we were able to change the focus weekly if need be for things that we saw that we wanted to work on. And that group picked things up and didn't challenge us. They were willing to work on things week to week. And so we saw a lot of growth. And so I think being at McKendree, it prepared me to be focused and to really focus on individual growth of athletes and how that can contribute to the overall growth of a team.
Of course, while at McKendree, how was it like being the head club water polo coach, and what did you take over from as the head club water polo coach to Connecticut College?
So at McKendree, it's really interesting. If they offer a varsity sport, they offer a club version. And I think that's really cool, because it just offers a wider experience to athletes or students who just want to go there. So we were fortunate enough to have a club team, and shout out to them. A big fan of our men's club team at McKendree. It was a really great experience. So the way our day would be structured, we'd start off with our varsity practice and then roll into club. So things we were working on in varsity, I got to then directly take and apply with those club gentlemen. And it was great. It was such a positive environment, and it was really fun to get to do even more water polo, to continue to build on things and see myself. I got to, okay, how is Colleen explaining this drill? What is she emphasizing? What does she find important to correct like our varsity guys on. And then I would get to take that. And then in our club practice, I'm like, all right, guys, this is kind of what we're looking for. And it was a really cool dynamic to get to practice that day instead of, typically you might have to wait 2 days later, 3 days later to implement that type of experience. And so I really enjoyed it. And I think taking from there, we had a really fun, and I think the boys or the young gentlemen would agree, a very challenging club championships last fall. We only had one sub and then lost our sub because he got an orbital fracture in his face early on in the tournament. And so I think that tournament taught me how to manage a lot of different fires going on when you're the only adults in charge of a group of individuals, right? And learning to shuttle them to games, to the hospital, to meals. And it really taught me, okay, I can do some hard things. And that experience, and it's positive. They were so positive. I couldn't believe it. Even the kid who was bleeding out on the bench. So I think it just taught me to really appreciate the people who you have around you and realize, doesn't matter what's happening, you can make it through if you stay pretty positive. And so that experience, I'm able to take that into all future coaching endeavors and just be really positive about it.
What does a typical game day look like for you as a coach versus for your players at Connecticut College?
Yeah, so let's imagine we have a doubleheader, which is just 2 games in one day. So maybe this is like our champs 2 weeks ago. I like to wake up very early. I also don't like to do any type of scouting work day of. So I might have spent the couple days leading up watching some film, trying to get some numbers down or even some notes to say about the other team. But when it comes to the day of, I like to focus in-house. So as the assistant, I'll get our media day post up, and then I start by just getting a meal in me. Typically, we get the girls up early as well. So for their day, hopefully they're waking up before we tell them to. We make it down, we get breakfast in us. And then I don't know if you follow Connecticut College Water Polo on Instagram, but I am draining my phone battery trying to get content of the girls on game day. Because we kind of believe, like what we found in our program is that if both Coach Matt and I are not so much, I'd say light, but if we're in a good mood, we're feeling happy, like the girls are being themselves, we're taking funny videos of them, whatever, it carries like into the game easier, which was really important considering we had so many first-year athletes that we didn't want to put unnecessary pressure on them that messes with their mental state. So we like to keep a light in the morning. We might do a swim out depending on what time we play. Typically, we'll roll up. We don't like to get to the pool too early. A water polo warm-up, it depends on the team. When I was in college, we had to do a full game before ours warm-up. Our coach wanted us to be in there for like an hour. But here at Connecticut, we think 35 minutes in pool is perfect. So our girls will roll up to the pool. We've already talked to them at the hotel, hopefully. So they just show up, get changed. They do a dry land exercise, which was actually put together by our amazing strength and conditioning coach, Annalise. And they do that every time, loose on deck. They'll hop in the water. That's when my duties continue. I'm filming them. I'm making sure to post a link for our great parents who want to watch us online. And then I'm organizing caps. I'm also kind of an interesting person, whether I'm a head or an assistant. I don't like to do too much talking before a game. And so my head coach, Matt, he totally supports that. And so I'll kind of distance myself when it's game time. When my team's in the pool and we're getting ready, I'm not up there talking to parents. I'm not really rubbing elbows with the refs. I'm trying to kind of stay in-house, and I'll go over my stat sheet, make sure it's organized how I want it, check with the desk, make sure they have the correct names, things like that. Making sure we got the inhalers by the bench, because you never know how intense it gets in there. But really just focusing on the humans that are in this experience with me. That's kind of where I'm at on game days. And then hopefully we play a great game where we put in great effort. Post-game, the girls get a quick cool down, talk to them briefly, and then really move on from what happened. I don't like to sit in the feeling of any one game, whether that's a win or a loss. It doesn't really matter whether we win or loss. My mood is more dependent on the effort level. So, but regardless of how I'm feeling, I like to talk it through with the team, and then we move on. And then game day, maybe we repeat it for game 2, or we just go get a great meal and we relax. And that's kind of what a game day looks like for us.
Of course, what does that home game atmosphere look like at Connecticut College?
Yeah, so we have a beautiful, we call it the desert. Welcome to the desert, because we are the camels here. which is pretty fun out in Connecticut. A typical home game, we don't play many very often, but when we do, we get a smaller crowd. You'll see a lot more of our parents coming out actually to regional games, which is pretty funny. But at a home game, it gets loud. Indoor pools, something I'm adjusting to after being out in California. Your voice carries. So I think what's really fun about our team is we lean into the hump for our mascot. And so at home games, you'll see a lot more cheering, a lot more emphasis on the camel itself. And we really lean into being in the desert and what that kind of looks like. On game days at home, we have a lot more content up. The players typically take over our social medias because they're so excited and they get really engaged. And then we get a lot of support from our higher ups. You'll have our AD down here. We see our trainers, our assistant AD. They're getting into it. Maybe they're a little confused by how loud Matt and I might be yelling, but they're supportive. And that's kind of what a game day at home looks like. We get our men's team up on the desk if our women are playing. So that's really fun, getting both teams to kind of interact more. And typically we try to get recruits out as well, so they can kind of have a firsthand experience of what it would be like to play here.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you play each week?
Yeah, so on our women's side, we're in the CWPA and we're the East region. And so we'll play teams like Utica, W&J, and Grove City, and then PSB as well. And then on the other half of our conference is Austin College, Carthage, Augustana. And then on the men's side, we'll play teams like MIT. We're in a different conference. We're the Northeast Water Polo Athletic Conference. And so we will play teams like Princeton. On the men's side, we'll play teams like Harvard, like Brown, and they will be conference games. Whereas on the women's side, they're more just friendlies. But for our men's team, that's who we directly compete with.
Of course, for your men's team, what is that like, obviously going against those big dogs like Princeton, Harvard, Yale?
So I just got here in January for our women's season, so I haven't had that experience yet with our men's team, but I have a feeling it'll be pretty similar to that of our women's team. Not to reveal too much about their mindset before we were playing Brown, but there was definitely some lack of enthusiasm, right? They were a little more hesitant, a little more nervous heading into games like that. But I think what we need to remind them is that the most growth you're going to see is in game, right? That's where you're going to get that experience that you cannot replicate at a practice, in a drill, any other time. And so I think is when they go into those games, the mentality is similar to what I had at Whittier when we placed those teams. I'm going to make it as hard as I can for them to win. And whether they win or not, it's not going to be easy. And that's kind of the attitude we like to encourage, right? That you don't just have to roll over and be kind of nervous about it. Like, you can challenge these teams and we can all have a really good experience from that.
Of course, for my listeners that don't know, how do you play collegiate water polo?
Water polo, I would say, is a lot like basketball, even though I've never played basketball. But we have a lot of similar positions. We do post-ups, screens, things like that. There's also a shot clock. So I would say it's more a balance between basketball and soccer. I think it's a really fluid game. I think it allows a lot of opportunity to be creative. You also have to play both offense and defense, unless you're a goalie. But even in that case, you get to play offense if you want. But yeah, I think it's a really challenging game. It is an incredibly physically demanding game that if you can be creative, I think it lends itself to you. But it's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun. So
talk about, of course, the culture that you've helped to build for the Connecticut College water polo program.
Yeah, so here at Con, there was already an incredible culture established by our head coach, Matt Anderson. So it was a really fun environment to come into. We have we have first years on our team. I believe we have 9. So that amount of athletes, when you only have 14 on your roster, you're looking at a lot of playtime for a lot of athletes who don't have that experience. And so I think what we wanted to constantly remind them throughout our season is that we're here to build and we're here to learn. And so we focused on just being incredibly positive and focused, like I said earlier, on effort. And we have a really great team who they put in constant effort, both in practice and in game. So it was a lot of fun just to continue to build on that. Okay, we can do hard things. We can push ourselves. All right, now we're in game and we're doing those hard things. Can we continue to push ourselves? And so I think coming in and having a lot of young energy and just excitement for the season really helped push that type of message that Coach Matt had established, that we're here to work hard and have fun, but we can work hard as well.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play collegiate water polo?
So the recruiting process for us, I would say it's all about communication. I'm sure a lot of coaches will say that, but I think water polo is such a region-based sport that if you happen to be outside of California, you might feel like you're at a disadvantage when it comes to playing in college, which isn't untrue, unfortunately. But I think USA Water Polo, our governing body for like the club organization as well, or club side, does an amazing job of creating opportunities to get athletes outside of the major areas of water polo that exposure. So the recruiting process, I would say it begins by making contact. You got to identify what schools and what programs you see yourself at. And I started with school over program because I think unless you don't care what you study, you don't care where you're at, you don't care anything other than just the water polo side, then only look at water polo. But I think the more logical thing that makes sense is to look at a school, look at an area, and then identify whether or not they have a program that seems like it would be a fit for you. And then what I would do, what I kind of did, I stalked my coach a little. All right, Coach Justin Pebble of Whittier College, I want to see you coach. I started watching live streams of the women's games because I'm like, I want to hear if I want to be yelled at by this guy. I think some athletes maybe don't do that work, which is funny because us as coaches, we want to see you constantly. So in that recruiting process, get film of yourself, get as much as you can, right? And have your coach look over that film, your club, your high school coach, before you send it to a college coach and be like, maybe this is what they're looking for, right? I think doing research on the school or the program itself first really sets you up. Because, I stalked my college coach before I went and played for him because I wanted to know if I could take being yelled at by him or coached by him. Sorry, not yelled at. And so I think that's one of the most important keys that maybe doesn't get talked about in the recruiting process, that maybe athletes don't think about either. Definitely check in on the coach themselves. Do a little stalking, right? See what message they're delivering. If you can hear one of their team talks, if you can stalk their Twitter. What are they tweeting about, and then I think that'll give you a better sense of, okay, how is this dynamic maybe going to go? And then, of course, reach out to the coach. Let them know that you stalked their game, that you heard them coach at, on the live stream, and bring those things up and talk about the things that you find important from an athlete to coach relationship. And then I think that honestly will give you so much more perspective in your journey of where you want to go.
Of course, as a college coach, what are some of the things that you look at in those prospective student athletes when going out on the road recruiting?
One of the biggest things that I look for is an athlete's ability to take accountability. And I mean that in the sense, I think it's really easy for us, and I fall into it. You'll hear me as a coach, I might blame the refs. And in our sport, for some reason, I think water polo coaches and water polo refs really can butt heads on who is right, even though in the grand scheme, outside of the game, doesn't really matter. And so I think when I'm talking to athletes, I like to talk to them. I'll point out certain highlights, certain positives maybe in the game that I saw they did, so that way they can talk to it and kind of feel like, oh, she is noticing. But then I also might bring something up and be like, oh, it looked a little tough like that. That was an offensive. So the ball wasn't, changed over. I might make a comment about something that was a call they didn't necessarily agree with. And I want to see how they assess that. I want to see if they're going to use that as an excuse for why they can't do things. Because let me tell you, in water polo, you can find a million excuses for why you couldn't pass the ball, right? The other team's grabbing me. Fortunately, that's just going to happen, And so I really look for those athletes who aren't making those excuses, right? So maybe they didn't get the pass off. Maybe this person was trying to enter it into set, something happened and it was a turnover. I ask them about it and they're like, oh yeah, that defender, their hips were up. They were so high, I couldn't turn them. And if they kind of hear them speak to their experience of taking ownership for themselves in that moment, it's a huge, huge plus for me. Because I think it's important for both coaches and athletes to kind of take responsibility for their choices and things like that. And so I kind of look for, are they able to take accountability and ownership over maybe mistakes that happen in game, because they're going to happen. They happen even for coaches,
Of course, for those prospective student athletes, what does that official visit look like for Connecticut College?
So if you are fortunate enough, no, but if you just want to travel out here to Connecticut, you have a couple options. So because we're Division III, we don't pay. We can't like take you out to Chris Ruth's Steakhouse, and set you up, but you can come out on a visit, stay with one of our athletes. We like to do it both in and out of season since we are a dual gender program. If you are a prospect for our men's team, but you're coming out in the spring, that's awesome. You'll get to come down to our games, watch a women's practice, hang out with our men's team. You're going to get dinner or lunch. If you're staying the night, you're going to hang out with the men's team or women's, depending, and just kind of get to go to their classes, get to spend some time on campus. If you're lucky, you'll get to go to a club hockey game. Club hockey's huge here at McKendree. They're allowed to fight, or not McKendree, here at Con. McKendree had a club ice hockey team too. Did not know you're allowed to swing in club hockey. So really impressed by that. But yeah, so you'll get to check out some of the other games. We have a lot of beautiful facilities here, which is really fun at Con. But that's typically what a visit will look like. You'll also get to meet with Coach Matt and I. We share an office, so you'll get to come in here and kind of be exposed to some of the things, the elements that we believe are important to our program.
Of course, for those freshmen, what is that like as their coach, seeing those freshmen put on that cap for the first time?
So watching those first years get to cap up for the first time was really exciting. Even at McKendree, both groups, whether I was with the men's team there or the women's team here at Con, you could feel the nervous energy. I don't think you can get rid of that experience, even no matter what your experience looked like in high school. A lot of these kids were playing club. So they were just playing high intense water polo all summer. Fast forward a couple months, now they're playing in college. And even though they have that experience, I think seeing their not vulnerability, but seeing them be like ready for whatever is about to come. They truly had no idea what was about to happen. And so getting to see that excitement and then getting to see them do things in the water and be successful is incredible. It was incredible last fall, getting to see those gentlemen do some gnarly shots. We had a great first weekend, which was really fun, getting to see new positions, putting new athletes in positions we never thought they would go to. So yeah, getting to watch the freshmen is really exciting. It's really fun.
Of course, what is that like seeing those freshmen put it on for the first time and those seniors put it on for the last time?
So getting the seniors here at Con, we had 2 seniors. Watching them cap up for the last time, you don't want to make it too focused on how emotional it is. But of course, like you can't help but think about your own experience and what that felt like when you were preparing for what could be or could not be your final game. So at Connecticut, we did know that 3rd and 4th place game was going to be their final game. So getting to watch the seniors cap up, you just look at them and you're like, you can trust that they have, where the first years have this air of anxious energy. You see the seniors where it's almost like a reverence. They're like, oh, like I've done this before. I've done it so many times, but now I'm realizing I'm doing it for this last time. And so it's total opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to energy, but it's just as exciting. It was incredible getting to watch Maria and Leanne play, our women's seniors this year. It was awesome getting to see just their experience and how it created a level of calm for the other women in the program. And it was awesome. It was really great getting to see them cap up one last time.
As a coach, what is it like seeing those players go on and achieve great things after collegiately, whether it's getting into college coaching and coaching water polo or going for like the national team or overseas?
It's amazing. I think it can't be probably stated enough how emotionally invested coaching can be. I'm sure a lot of coaches feel that way, but it's awesome getting to see your athletes go on and pursue things they're interested in. And that even applies, I'm thinking about my former athletes from the high school level, getting those who are going on to continue to play. How excited I am that I'm going to see them this fall on deck, hopefully in competition, just is incredible, right? You want these people to continue to do things that they enjoy. And so whether they're going on to grad school after college or they're going straight into the workforce, what I love about being a college coach is while I think water polo might or should be, the most important thing in your life, it isn't and it shouldn't be. And so it's great to see them take their outside interests and just pursue those with as much effort as you've gotten from them in the pool.
Of course, what are some of your future plans for the program moving forward?
So here we're planning on hitting it a little harder next year. Next fall, hopefully our women will use the volunteer swim time that they can come in on their own, and we'll be doing some laps. So we realized there were some areas that we needed to work on by the end of our season, and the girls are already texting me, are already asking about what they need to focus on. So I think as we prepare, we also hopefully want to have a goalie. On our women's side, we did not have a goalie, and so we trained up and worked with one of our juniors, Sarah Franco, who's also a captain, and put her in cage, to which she did a phenomenal job. And we'll probably work with her throughout the fall. Well, we won't get to work with her because of Division III, but hopefully she'll work on her own this fall and continue to develop, because as we go into our next women's season, we're feeling really positive that hopefully we can make it a little bit further than we did this year. And so that's, I know, what we're looking for on our women's side. For our men's side, we're hoping to continue to just build on this momentum. I see those young men come in during the volunteer swim hours. I see them doing a lot more shooting than swimming, but hopefully same thing with them. We just continue to build. We got some great first years coming in. We got great ones this last year on our men's side, and we're continuing to add more to our program. So I'm really looking forward to building on the men's side this fall as well.
What advice would you give those high school athletes looking to go into collegiate water polo?
If you're trying to be a college water polo athlete, I think you definitely need to look at what the commitment level would be. Every program looks different, regardless of, you have certain similarities between divisions, but even at the division level, it's different. And it's different depending on conference. So I would say you really should do your homework on what you want that academic and athletic balance to be, because in college, you'll find there's a ton of time for you in your schedule if you choose it. And that depends obviously on the institution that you go to. You need to make sure, what do I want my commitment level to be? So for me personally at Whittier College, I knew I wanted a high intensive training schedule, but I also knew that I didn't want to have to be required to be there during the summer, like a lot of programs require. They require that summer training. So I think if you're looking to go be a college athlete, really look at what you want, what you value, right, when it comes to the next 4 years. Because you do want to play for 4 years. You want to continue and make it through and continue to develop as well. So
what advice would you give those collegiate athletes that are looking to go into professional water polo, whether it's with Team USA or overseas?
Yeah, so I would talk to people who have done it before you. So what's great about USA Water Polo, what's great about our sport here is that we actually have masters competitions. You see that like with swimming. I'm sure there's other sports, but I don't want to speak to it. But we have masters water polo, and they are highly competitive, some of these older teams. And so I would recommend getting involved in a masters national team, and then talking with other athletes who have done those experiences. So there were girls that I played with growing up who went and played internationally. There is not professional water polo, unfortunately, in the United States, but you can go internationally to Europe and Australia to play in different leagues. And so I would recommend having conversations with girls. It's a small world. I might be playing at Whittier, but if there's a girl on Long Beach who's playing internationally in Australia, and I'm interested in it, go up to her on the pool deck and ask her how she did that, right? I think the biggest resource available to us is our community, just because it's a small world in water polo. That's what we're always saying. And so I think that applies to high schoolers trying to get into college athletes looking to play professionally. You need to talk to other coaches and other athletes. There are so many people around you who have experience that you might not realize. And I think that's probably the most helpful.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are looking to get into college coaching?
If you're looking to get into college coaching, I think the biggest thing would be looking at where the jobs are. So our sport has done a great job of growing in areas outside of, like I said, the Mecca, which is Southern California. So we have teams popping up out here, out east. We have them throughout the Midwest. And I think it's great. There's a lot of openings and interchange that happens in our sport. So I would continue to look outside of California. A lot of people might be hesitant, to leave that area, but there is such a large population of college water polo coaches in that area that I think it's incredible to get outside and to look at other areas that need development or need coaches who are just young and passionate. And sorry, you don't have to be young. Coaches who are just passionate and really want to get into the sport. So I would recommend looking outside of California, but I would also recommend just talking to coaches. So when you're on a deck, walk up to a coach, ask him how they're doing. Because I guarantee if there's a club coach, he could happen to be a college coach. If he's a college coach, he might be running a club team at the youth level. So I think taking any opportunity to just meet the people in our sport is a great idea. Refs included. You should definitely talk to refs as well.
That's great advice. What advice would you give future college coaches looking to get started in coaching in college water polo?
If you're trying to get started, I would say the biggest thing is don't be deterred maybe by what limitations you see. So being totally transparent, some of these jobs, just because of the popularity of our sport, aren't going to pay you a ton of money, and that's okay. I think we need to get comfortable with accepting where everything is in our sport and kind of building off of that. And so I think be willing to take the leap. So I was a high school teacher. It was a great job. I really enjoyed it. I loved the coaching I was doing there. And it was really scary to quit this super awesome, stable job in a great area to then take a risk to go coach water polo in a place I'd never seen. I'd never seen Illinois or Missouri. And I moved out there. I hadn't seen Connecticut either. And it was worth it though. I want people to know that, like, it's worth taking that risk and taking that opportunity, because these jobs, the reality of coaching, I think honestly in college athletics in general, it's probably not just applied to water polo. They're not high paying jobs, and that's all right. So I think any advice I could give is just to take the chance, take the opportunity.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the Connecticut College Water Polo program at?
Yeah, so I run our men's and women's Instagram and social media or Twitter. And so we're just call water polo on Instagram and on Twitter, con with 2 N's. And you'll find us called Hump, and we have a nice camel as our profile picture. So you can check us out on there. That's also the one I use for myself through coaching. And yeah, you should feel free to follow.
Thank you again, Coach Hannah Ellett, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Connecticut College as an assistant water polo coach.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Hannah Ellett, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.